Today we're interviewing Jeremy Dailey, worship pastor at Marcus Point Baptist Church, on the Deep Dive, episode 23.
Josh, the studio is filled up today.
Yeah. We have 25%, or no, I guess 33% more people than we normally do.
And we have more equipment than we normally do.
Yeah.
We're actually videoing some of this.
I forgot.
Yeah, we got lights. You're wearing appropriate clothing.
Okay.
That's good. We didn't tell our guests.
It's funny because I came in and you were setting all that stuff up, but I wasn't even paying attention. And it just dawned on me right now that, oh, yeah, we are videoing.
Yep.
I actually sat and made sure I was sitting in the right place for the video and had that conversation.
Oh, Chris is our audio engineer today. He's our video engineer also. We came in early and set up a camera right in front of our guest that's far back. He probably didn't even know it was there. This is just going to be for shorts, video just to put out on YouTube, just real quick kind of thing.
Guest, by the way, Jeremy Dailey.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, Jeremy is here. Jeremy.
Say hi.
Hello, everyone.
I totally forgot he was here. Jeremy, thank you for joining us today. Jeremy is the worship pastor here at Marcus Point Baptist Church. Mm-hmm. That's a big job.
Yeah.
It's I venture to say that there's not a person that comes into this church who has been here before who doesn't know who Jeremy is. First of all, pastor mentions your name practically every Sunday.
Right.
Oh, that's not intimidating at all. Although I will say, being on stage in front of our church, there's like typically 1,000 people.
Yeah.
I'm more nervous right now.
Are you?
There's these big lights, and I didn't know we were videotaping.
I know you didn't.
And I got these pro silky voices going.
Oh, sure.
And and then Josh said there's 33% more people, and I'm glad he didn't rank that by weight, because that would be more. So I'm borderline intimidated right now, but hey, I'm excited to be here.
We are.
That's right. If you're in front of 1,000 people on Sunday, you got this covered, because we have a listenership of, I think, 3.5.
Yeah, 3.5 solid listeners, man.
One of them is my mom.
Hey, Mom. Hey, Mom.
That's right. Yeah. My cousin and her family listen from Mississippi, so we've got them. Anyway.
Well, that's more than 3 right there.
Yeah, it's really, honestly, the number's about 12.
Yeah.
We haven't looked at the numbers here recently, but who knows?
Well, maybe we'll break the internet today.
Maybe so. 15 or 20.
Well, this will be our second episode that's up on YouTube.
Yep, that's right.
Sweet.
And
Started
so,
YouTube,
we'll have, I think, as YouTube starts to give you like different plaques and stuff for how many listeners and subscribers you have, I think the one we're headed towards is like aluminum foil.
Yep, aluminum foil. Right.
Yeah.
Paper, aluminum foil, maybe 10, something like that.
Yeah.
Jeremy, listen, it's a pleasure to have you on. It is. Thank you for being here. It's one of the things that was a stipulation is that we had to start at 10:30 because Jeremy is dedicated to his workout. You just came from your workout,
I
right?
just came. Can you tell? I mean, you see the biceps, of course.
Well, I'm already convicted.
Jeremy has been, man, you have been dedicated to this recently, haven't you? How does that look?
Yeah, probably a little bit over a year ago. I mean, I've been on a journey all my life. It's sort of that up and down roller coaster.
Sure.
Did a lot of sports, but about a year ago, I just really was convicted that, my body's a temple. I'm getting older. Mm-hmm. Can anybody relate here at the table?
Yeah, man.
And it's like, I got to get this under control, and just really committed to being in the gym. And I'll tell you what, it's amazing how much the physical and spiritual are intertwined.
Ooh.
When you feel better, when you feel better, I don't know, it just makes you more disciplined.
Okay.
And it's really helped me with my spiritual life as well. So
how so? You said it's intertwined. So are you more motivated in every way, or how does that work?
Well, I think when you just make a decision that you don't really have an option to opt out.
Okay.
That discipline kind of can translate into other parts of your life. When it comes to my quiet time, that same motive is not opting out of it.
Okay.
It's like it's a part of my daily makeup.
Yep.
And when it becomes non-optional, things begin to change.
Yes.
Just like the scale starts changing, your clothes start fitting better. When you make it non-optional to spend time with the Lord every day, you can't help but change spiritually. You know,
That's beautiful.
so really trying to, I think I'm going to have spiritual abs quicker than I'll have physical abs. But hey,
You know that verse when Jesus was talking to the Pharisees and he called them whited sepulchres full of dead man's bones. You know, they had the appearance of holiness, but there's nothing really going on inside.
Right.
That's kind of how I am. I have a gym membership.
Yeah.
And so when people ask me, like, oh, yeah, I'm a member of this gym.
I pay every month.
Yeah. And then I kind of like stand behind something so they can't see that, I don't actually go as much as I should.
But Josh, what literally what a great analogy, because I hadn't really thought about that. Gyms love people that don't go because they get their money and they don't have all the wear and tear.
Yeah.
But how many times do we go to church and maybe even give a tithe? So we're paying to go, but we don't spend time with Jesus every day.
Right.
So we're kind of paying our membership dues, but we're not getting anything out of it.
But Josh and I talk frequently about how Sunday
Where's
is
copyright that one?
Yeah, there we go.
how Sunday is really designed to be a starter for the week or a highlight. There's no way pastors have time to go over a deep dive Bible study. You know, it's a 20, 25, 35, 45 minute highlight. And Josh mentioned so many times about how we should use that as a checklist to start our weekly study. If you're doing nothing else, do that. Go deeper.
That, one of the founding concepts of the Deep Dives podcast is, a lot of times in church we hear the instructions like you need to be doing daily devotionals or you need to be doing personal Bible study, whatever, but nobody really gives you a mechanism of how to do that.
Yeah.
You're kind of left to your own devices. Do I go get a book, like a devotional book, or do I, read a chapter of Proverbs every day? And then after once you're in the second month, what do I do now? And so we decided we're just going to use the Sunday morning sermon as sort of the jumping off point into a Bible study for the rest of the week, because you can go into each of the verses that the pastor uses. I mean, the sermon on Sunday morning is intended to be not too deep, because that's when all your guests are there and you're only limited to like 45 minutes or whatever.
Right.
But all those verses that he uses, there's a tremendous depth to what's going on there that can, if you don't have anything available to do a Bible study, you have a Sunday morning sermon.
That's awesome.
That can be, and one thing I've always wanted to do, which is part of the reason why you're here today as an interview, I've always wanted to do that on the music.
Yes, absolutely.
I've always wanted to do a Bible study on, let's deep dive into the music on Sunday, because that can be used as a Bible study. For
Well,
the
no
rest of the
pressure,
week.
but I can't remember who said it. Maybe Billy Graham. I just can't remember exactly. But they said the second most likely place for people to find their theology is in the music of the church.
I agree with that.
And so we, as worship leaders, we have to steward that well, because when you put a melody in someone's head and then stick lyrics to it, you literally can teach truth quickly.
Wow, yeah.
But you can also teach untruths quickly.
Wow, yeah.
And not that it's necessarily heretical, but you're not teaching the true character of God. You could really mess that up. And so,
Right.
That's a lot of pressure.
I've heard it stated the opposite way too. Is if you want to destroy a church, attack the music.
Yeah.
And that's one of the main ways Satan really inserts division into church. Is he attacks the music and he attacks the truth of Scripture.
Right,
We start to
right.
doubt, kind of like in the garden. Did God really say that?
Right.
That
yeah.
kind of stuff.
That's kind of like 20 years ago. And fortunately, I think it's waning, but there were what they called the worship wars. Everybody just warring over style of music in church.
Right.
And man, it was crazy. It was so divisive. And the thing that was frustrating is that we weren't necessarily focusing in on the lyrical content or the scripture value of the songs. It was really coming down to preference. And churches were being divided over preferences over lyrical content. And so fortunately, I think we've gotten through a lot of that. And but man, Josh is right. Music can be one of the most divisive subject matters in church.
Sure. I think proof of that is if the people that I talk to about looking for churches, one of the top two, one is children's ministry, and the second one is the music.
Right.
I didn't really like the music. I'm not going to be able to. I love the music. It's really the first or second thing out of their mouths.
Yeah.
What an impact! And it's the first thing that we hear, right? But before we get into that, I'm so glad you're here, because that is.
We're jumping the gun into our questions
we
before.
We are. I wanted to talk to Jeremy about when he when he and Deborah, his wife and family, came, we had Deborah on the podcast, by the way. Boy, what a man!
That was
she
before
is-
we were the Deep Dives podcast. We were just the Marcus Point
That's right.
podcast. Yeah.
She is top notch, dude. I don't know if you know that or not, Jeremy, but your wife is top notch.
I always ask her, I said, what criminally did you do in your past life to deserve me?
Man, she is so.
She's the
highly-
win. I think Marcus Point is starting to figure it out. It's
Yeah.
like they thought maybe they had some good out of me. Like she's the win.
She's the
it's like I'm
win.
just ancillary. You know.
And we have Jeremy too. Good.
And, you know.
It stopped being she's Jeremy's wife. Now you're
Right.
now you're
I'm Deborah's husband.
You're Deborah's husband. Yeah.
She gave us the rundown on, y'all were in Louisiana and happy. Things were going so well. She had a good job. Everything was good.
She had a great job.
She had a great job. And just God called y'all here. And I'm thankful. We're all thankful that he did. So thank you for listening to him. Thank you for being faithful. Thank
Absolutely.
you for being available. You stepped in at a very difficult time.
And thank you for bringing Deborah here.
Honestly, she had to make the biggest sacrifice. I mean, she was tenured at LSU, and I mean, everything was going well. I
Man.
mean, she could have retired well, and we just picked up and moved, and she could not, literally in this area, she could not find the same type of work.
It's not available.
And it's just not as available as it was there.
Yeah. Not as
But
available.
she made the sacrifice, and if a pastor's wife is not willing to make that type of sacrifice, then it's futile.
It's not going to work.
So
Wow.
I will publicly state I am most grateful for my wife.
Man, I'm telling you, it takes about 15 seconds to talk to her and realize you're talking to a very intelligent person. A very intelligent person.
She lectures us daily.
She-
No, I'm kidding.
How smart she is. No.
No. She used to lecture in 200 or 300 students in lecture halls, and
you
sometimes
go.
we're at home and we're like, "Babe, we're not in a lecture hall anymore." But she's just smart. She's smart on every topic, really.
She got a couple degrees, doesn't she? She's
A couple. Yeah.
degrees.
She was working on her third when we
Wow.
moved. She was on her doctorate, and
My goodness gracious.
so one day she and I both may finish
Yeah.
those postgraduate degrees. You know.
Awesome. Sure.
So-
Right
Well, tell
now.
us more about your background.
Oh goodness, we don't have time for that. No. I'll try to go as quick as I can. I was born in Indianapolis, Indiana, to Steve and Darlene Dailey. I was born as a twin boy,
good.
and about the time we were born, it wasn't long before that my dad had been saved. He didn't grow up in church. My grandpa was a corporate man. In charge of I'm trying to Carrier air conditioning, and one of the higher ups. And one day, a pastor shows up to their home, as they did in those days, knocking on doors, invites the family to church. They come to church, and over the next couple of weeks, everyone in the family gets saved.
Wow.
Radically saved.
Wow.
My dad tells stories of them having parties, not drinking alcohol, but pouring it down the drain because they were alcoholics.
Oh, wow.
I would never believe this, but he would tell me my grandmother used to cuss like a sailor, and it's like, Dad, she cursed? No, she cussed like a sailor. And I was like, I can't wrap my head around that because they were so radically saved.
Wow.
Dad ends up being called into the ministry out of engineer. He used to be an engineer. He would literally mark steel beams for bridge building. It was before the days of all the computerized stuff. He literally would put physical marks on steel beams. So if he messed up, there was lots of money down the drain. And he walked away from all that because God said, become a minister of the gospel. And he evangelized for several years, traveling all over the tri-state area, Indiana, Ohio, Kentucky. And he would take us with him as little boys. I remember sitting on the front row. And we've seen it all. We've seen every type of background, including snake handling. We'll save that
that
story for the
right?
next podcast. But
Now I want to have your dad on, another engineer.
you should have him on. But early in our childhood, he felt like he was gone too much, and he decided that the Lord was moving him into being a pastor. And so I guess around the age of 3 or 4, he decides to become a pastor, and he's been pastoring ever since. My brother and I will be 49 this year, and so he's been pastoring that long.
Wow.
In Indianapolis, Indiana. And for about 20 years, they had a Christian school ministry that was pretty vibrant. And then on top of that, they have always had a singing musical traveling group.
Is that right? So family is
Family
musical.
group. My mom was a piano player. Dad is he plays everything but the drums, and they sing, and so that's our musical background.
Wow, how about that?
Yeah, so we were raised in church, pastor's home. I wanted to be a physical therapist growing up because we had a university right 2 blocks from my house, and he said, just go to Bible college 1 year, and you can do whatever you want. Well, I went to Bible college in Dallas, Texas, and I never came home.
Is that okay?
I've been traveling I-10 ever since. Dallas, Texas, then I spent 20 years of my adult life in Baton Rouge, and then just 7 years ago, we were called here.
7 years ago. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Served at my last church, Greenville Springs Baptist Church, for 11 years.
My goodness gracious.
And that is where I met Deborah.
Okay.
And she actually served on my youth leadership team. I was the bivocational student pastor there. My degree is in education, communication, and Bible. And so my trajectory started early as an educator, because that's sort of what my parents wanted me to be. And so I was in administration, in education for 8 years. And I realized very quickly that was not my calling. Okay. That was Deborah's calling. But I've always been, in college, I came across praise and worship music for the very first time.
Okay.
I had never heard vertical lyrics to Jesus.
Okay.
We had always sang hymns that were more experiential.
Right.
Blessed assurance, Jesus is mine. I'll fly away. Oh, glory. You know, we would sing, and the music was very lively at my church. It was very lively, but I had never experienced like vertical singing to God. And I'll never forget asking my parents, why did you keep this from me? And I don't even think they like kept it from me. Yeah. But the first time I heard it, I knew that's what I was supposed to do.
Okay.
And because early on, I thought the only thing that boys could do in ministry was preach. My dad's a preacher. My twin brother's a preacher. My grandpa's a preacher. And I thought that's what I was going to be doing. And that's just not my calling. I love to preach, but as a general gift, it's not. I mean, I need a lot of time to prepare. Okay. But music and worship is just, it just seems so natural, and I feel like that's what God's called me to do. And so to find these positions where men can come into churches as a profession and lead churches in worship through music, it's like
carved out for you.
Yeah.
It's my lane.
Well, it's kind of another form of preaching anyway, because the lyrics of these songs are deeply spiritual, and they have a lot of theological significance to them.
Absolutely.
So you're teaching, but there's a tune involved.
And over over the years, the one thing I missed early on was that our corporate leading in worship, it can, especially as a young guy, it's just it's a very dangerous thing when you put anybody on a stage and put lights on them and then ask them to perform, even in the name of Jesus. It can be challenging because you're sort of wrestling with yourself.
Okay.
There's ego. There is a level of performance that you have to have. You don't want to be a distraction,
Right.
but sometimes you can become so focused on your performance that really what you're actually there to do can be clouded. And so the journey for me over the last several years has been learning how to perform well, but also keep humility at the forefront, and understand the whole goal of this is for God's presence to be in this room.
I see. Okay. So
honestly, the best worship service I've ever been in, I sang a verse of a song, the whole crowd took over, and they didn't need me anymore. I literally, there was no need for a worship leader anymore. To me, that is the quintessential success of what we do, because the goal of this is to get the church lifting their voice to exalt the only one that matters.
Well, I noticed that a lot in our services. Is you might start the service out, but by the time the second verse comes along, like, you're not the one standing in front. You're like off to the side. You're letting everyone else get involved. I've noticed that a lot. That's pretty interesting.
I'm glad. I'm glad.
Yeah. I've heard from some of the people that are on the leadership team, the worship team, that you don't use the word performance. It's not a performance,
right?
Because that has a. You tell us why. Why is it not a performance?
Well, that's such a challenging topic, because there are performance aspects of it.
Yeah.
We always want to better our voices. We want to learn how to tap into more range, and we don't want to be pitchy. I mean, there's a performance element. Just last night we had a guest in talking to our worship team about stage presence. So there's all of those performance aspects, but it can't just be a performance if that's all it is, because performance is me. Look at me.
Okay. It's worship. You're worshiping.
Worship is look at him.
Gotcha.
We're not there to be stars.
Yeah.
I love what Mac Powell from Third Day said. He said we're there to be moons. So moons reflect the sun.
Nice.
So if you see anything good from us, it's only because we're reflecting him.
Nice.
So, but that's
so strong.
that's the rub. That's the rub.
Man.
I always say that the stage is like poison. You know, you can or not. It's like perfume. You can smell it and enjoy the aroma of it, but if you drink it, you're dead. You know.
Well, it's something.
I actually did that once accidentally.
drank perfume.
Well, I was in, so I'm sorry, I didn't mean to distract us, but no, when I was a kid, I was in
I was really going into a spiritual moment
I know,
there, and all of
man.
a sudden Josh is dead.
sorry, no, I was a kid and I was at some herbal herbal shop or whatever, and they had these little sample bottles on the shelf. And they had names like honeysuckle and all this stuff. I'm like, oh, that sounds cool. And they had this little thing,
delicious.
and I like put my little finger in it, and it was perfume. It tasted. It was the nastiest tasting
I bet
stuff.
it
Yeah.
was not made. Honeysuckle sounds like something you'd want to drink, though.
Right, yeah.
It does. That's
Sorry,
what it does. Something
did not mean to distract us there.
Thanks for driving my point home.
Yeah, no problem.
really
Don't drink
helps it.
perfume. I've done it.
Great.
Don't go there.
Don't drink it.
So drinking the perfume, the poison, whatever it is, something about us, we kind of take musicians and we lift them up, you know, and we look upon them as something that is better than a typical person. So I can see what you're saying. Musicians, right? A musician.
But here's
gets
how you
girls,
humble a
know?
musician real quick, because Satan was a musician.
Yeah.
He was the head worship leader.
Oh yeah.
And
there you go.
instead of serving the one he was there, it's like, well, I want the credit. I want the glory.
Gotcha.
And the minute you step into that, it's over.
You know, there's so many musicians that we all know and probably could name that have fallen into that, or the rumor is that they've fallen into that. And they're, you know, it started out as really, quote, good, really good people. But they're traveling around. They get in this lifestyle where things are not only given to them, but brought to them.
Yeah.
To their door. This is this, and you've got to be, I mean, being a typical person walking around this earth, you have to be diligent on saying no to things every day, every moment, right? Especially as men. We're really visually stimulated, so we've got to be very careful of the things that we lay our eyes on. But can you imagine people bringing you all the things that you struggle with?
Yeah.
Just that one weakness, man, that one night at 7 o'clock whenever you're depressed and something comes there could change your life forever. And I always wonder about musicians.
Yeah.
You know, James Taylor, Jim Croce, all the guys from way back then when they would travel around by themselves or with a band, real mellow dudes, but they get hooked on heroin. They go on. It just doesn't seem... And until you start thinking about it in those terms, for me anyway, it just doesn't seem like how did that work? I can see how I can see how Jerry Garcia had a hard time. My gosh, they get up and they sing about all the stuff that we struggle with. But you hear a really sweet love song from James Taylor. You go, how'd this guy get? You know, what happened?
Yeah.
It's just easy to get enamored by talent. You know, look at all NBA players or celebrities. We're so enamored just by who they are. But a lot of times we're so enamored by who they are, we forget they're real people. Yeah. And so no one's putting anything of substance into them. And so they're just they're just a house of cards, you know.
I think music is kind of a dangerous thing too, because there's like the emotional aspect of music and the intellectual aspect of music, and if you know, if you have music that's put together really well, it's like the talent of the music production, but you don't have anything substantial in the lyrics to satisfy that other side of you. It's almost like you're strengthening the emotional side, but you're not filling the other component. And I think, especially in secular music, if you have a diet of too much of the emotion and not a lot of the substance, then it kind of weakens your overall, I guess, resistance to getting involved in destructive things. Because when you look at a really good like a really good worship song or whatever, where it has really good music but also has really good lyrics, it kind of hits two parts of you really well.
Yes.
It brings you closer to God. Whereas if it was just the music and not lyrics, it would bring you closer to something, but it wouldn't focus your attention on God.
Well, right before you got here, Jeremy, I was playing Neil Diamond, and we were both singing away, you know what I mean, having a good time. But we weren't, you know, that's where I struggle. I mean, I'd still listen. I'm a dead Head fan. I saw Grateful Dead 6 times, once 3 nights in a row.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
Wow.
I still listen to some of that music now. Since I've lost my best friend Kent, we used to go to Dead, so it means something different to me now.
Right,
I
right.
remember him and 3 times out, but it doesn't have any. You know what I mean? I'm not praising Jesus. What a great analogy! What a great way to praise Him, bringing that emotional part of it, and you are praising Jesus.
There's sort of 2 pictures that I've recently gotten about. I mean, Josh is killing it today with his setups.
He always does it, man.
But it's kind of like think of like a vineyard, a healthy vine. You know, always has a trellis. It's like a structure underneath to hold it up. Otherwise, it just kind of roams on the ground and it's suspect to disease and all that kind of stuff. So if it's all emotion, like you're saying, then it's just growing on the ground and it's really subject to all the diseases and all those types of things. But if it's sort of started on a trellis and there's a structure to it, it's a lot more healthy.
Gotcha.
Another analogy that was given was like peanut butter and jelly. You know. If it's all emotion, it's kind of all the jelly. It's just real sweet, and it kind of an overload of sugar just can make you sick. You know.
Yeah.
But then on the other side, you have peanut butter, and if you just kind of have the peanut butter, it's kind of sticks to the roof of your mouth, and that's the truth side of it. But if that's all you have, then it's just kind of like it's harsh and.
That's good.
But you put it together, man.
Yeah, that's good.
And my buddy would say between the word of life, you know, the bread of life.
Yeah.
Then you got something.
That's good.
Because you got balance.
That's
and
really
that's what
good.
Josh is saying.
Yeah.
That's what worship music should be. It should hit all the emotional chords, but at the same time, it's built on the foundation of Scripture. And if it's not, it's really worthless.
How do you decide on what you're going to play? How do you do that?
That's a tough one, and it probably would take us a long time. Really, I listen to a lot of music. Our technology these days makes it really accessible. Spotify and Apple Music. People spend hours putting playlists together, you know, and kind of putting these really great playlists together. So a lot of times I just listen to music in the background, and lately our worship team, since Evan has come, Evan, myself, Sarah, and Chris, those are the 4 worship directors at our church. He will put together a suggested new song playlist and say, hey, I want you to add to this. And so we'll end up with 60 songs.
Wow.
And then our goal is to narrow it down to 10 to 15. And then we'll put that out into the world, you know, for the next 3 to 4 months. And, man, it's just, it's really hard to say what the criteria is, but obviously, I mean, some people use what they call the Berean test.
Berean?
Berean. It's like a
X1711, right?
It's like it's like a test they'll use for lyrical content.
Okay.
You know, is it
Search
is
the
it
scriptures daily to see if these are
biblical?
so.
And there's a lot of songs that are not necessarily unbiblical. They're not heresy, but they're not really. There's a lot of principles, but it's like you know. So it's like trying to find the steady diet of. To me, it's. I'll just break it down like this. There's basically 2 types of songs. You have songs of testimony, which are experiential. They're sort of horizontal.
Okay.
This is about me. This is about my experience with God. And then you have the songs of transcendence. Those are the songs that are like straight to God. How great is our God?
Oh, nice.
And to me, that's what I'm looking for is a steady diet. I would rather err on the side of transcendence than testimony.
Both have value. But
Both have value. But if I'm always talking about, you know, and there was a joke going around about 10 years ago that a lot of the worship songs were like, Jesus is my boyfriend songs. It was like these love songs to Jesus, and it was this squishy, emotional experiences in church, but there was never any kind of like worship and respect and awe of God. It was just our relationship, you know. And we need those songs because He's a relational God, but we also need to remember He is a just God. He is a God that is holy, which means set apart, other than us. And so for me, I'm just looking for a balance of testimony and transcendence.
Nice.
And we could probably talk for hours on that. A lot of times, I'm a little bit of a rebel. And I'll just make this known to the world. If people send me a song like, listen to this, I'm probably not going to listen to it immediately. There's something in me that needs to be redeemed.
Is that right?
There's a
So what we should do is, hey, don't listen to this song.
Exactly.
put it
The worst is like we've just ended a service and somebody brings their cell phone and they're like, jam it in my ear. Listen to this song, and we're like trying to transition services. And I'm like, I can't pay attention right now. And but honestly, don't quit sending songs. But if I start seeing 3 to 4 or 5 different representations of a certain song, it's like maybe I should listen to this song.
Okay.
And
Gotcha.
and I'll be in my Jeep somewhere and I'll start listening to it. I was like, you know what? They're onto something.
Okay.
And
My daughter the other day, she loves Chris Renzema.
yes, yeah.
She loves his music, and we were listening to it in the car the other day. She's like, wish we'd sing some of that. And I'm like, do you know how many songs that are that are available that they have to choose from?
It's tough. It's there, and that there's so many.
Yeah.
There's so many. And then another thing we have to wrestle with is how quickly, because we get because we do, before we even play a song in church, we've probably sung it 10 times.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So by the time it makes it to the stage in church, we're sick of it. And then I have to tell the worship team, the average church attender, and this is like great church attenders, are coming twice a month.
Wow.
And so if we present a song on a Sunday they're not there, then they probably won't hear it until the next. So so song life is another thing where it's like we're so sick of this song. The church has maybe heard it once or twice.
Yeah.
Wow.
You know. And so trying to figure out the rhythm in which we put out new material. There's nothing worse than coming to church wanting to worship God and you're like, I don't know this song. And you want to give it all, and it's like I would have to learn this song.
Yeah.
But new songs are great songs are new songs at some point.
They have to be.
You know?
So not that we've got to push new content.
You got to, yeah.
But I think it's there's a rhythm to do it.
Okay.
I've always liked doing a song and then repeating it the very next week.
Okay.
Because then you ensure if I miss somebody, they're going to be here the next week. If they were there last week, then they're going to know it this week.
Okay.
Maybe skip a week and then do it again. You know?
This is all very intentional by you.
It
very
is.
intentional.
It is.
So
Wow.
you mentioned like having sung a song so many times that you're sick of it by the time it gets to a worship service. So how does like the environment of worship change from the practice sessions to the church service?
The only thing I could say, part of my degree in college, it was I had communications, and I had a great speech teacher, and she just always said the way you practice is the way you perform.
Okay.
And so we really just try to bring that into our rehearsals. So I always call them real-time rehearsals. So when we rehearse, when we start, we really try to treat it like it's the real thing.
Okay.
And so for a person that's just in the room during a rehearsal, it may feel weird because I'm addressing the congregation even though they're not there.
Okay.
Because we want it to be, we don't want the rehearsal to feel or look any different than the actual church service, because the audience doesn't change because the audience is one, you know. And so we really try to do that. Is try to practice like we're going to be in church. Now, there will be times in a rehearsal where it's like, okay, something's going wrong and we need to fix it. And so we'll stop and fix it. But then we're right back into character, if you want to say.
Gotcha.
And it's not that you're faking it, but as you practice is how you perform. You know?
Okay.
So when you're, Sunday's coming up and you're trying to figure out the set list for Sunday, how does that process look like? Do you try to match the song choice with what's going to be talked about in the sermon, or are they two separate entities? Because I notice sometimes they do relate. And they relate quite well. Is that on purpose, or is that?
It's super ideal. I've served under, I guess, 5 pastors in my tenure, and every pastor is different. You know, there are some pastors that will put out 3 months of sermons ahead of time. Others, monthly. Others like to go week to week.
Yeah, I've heard ours is like Saturday night.
It's not true.
No, well, I really love how Pastor does it. There'll be times where it's like he has definitive series, and so when there's definitive series, he'll lay that out weeks ahead of time. But most of the time, it's there's the in between. There's a lot of fresh manna material, and his rule of thumb is to have that turned into the office by Thursday.
Okay.
And then the office will have the notes turned around by Thursday evening. So I already have my schedules out. So on a week like that, I really can't match up.
Yeah.
But like you said, it's always amazing to see. And I used to stress out over that kind of thing. It's like, well, I can't put anything out till I know what's going to be preached. And because I would hate to be talking about the army of the Lord and then sing a song called Hiding Place, you know?
Yeah.
You know, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's like, that's a fear of mine, but
That probably never happens.
the cool thing about
Very
God is that
seldom.
He's not bound by space and time,
There
and
you
so
go.
He's already ahead
Yeah.
of us.
Yeah, yeah,
And so
yeah.
when I know what's being preached, then I definitely will try to match themes and that type of thing. But when I don't, I just trust the Lord to help. And a lot of times when we build a set list, maybe people don't think about this type of thing, but we have to think about tempo. We have to think about keys. I have to think the keys of the song. I have to think about actually who's on the team that can actually lead those songs.
Yeah,
So there's a lot of
okay.
things. Kind of some rules of thumb. I don't like to, if I don't have to, I don't like to go down in key. So you're in the key of G and you're ringing it out, and then all of a sudden then you start the next song in F. It's like ding, ding. You know, it kind of feels like it
Okay.
brings you down a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, and that's not always the case. So, but a lot of great worship leaders have talked about the keys sort of ramping up. So even though the tempo is slowing, the keys seem to keep going up. So there's a sense of
Lifting.
it's crazy
Yeah.
how keys of songs can play on your emotions.
Oh, it can. Absolutely can.
In a typical worship set, we're going to start tempo-wise out the gate, sort of upbeat, and then throughout the service, we'll go to mid-tempo, and then by the end, we're bringing it down tempo-wise. But most of the time, the keys are going up.
About
See,
that.
I've never heard that articulated. I always noticed it. I remember when I was a teenager, I used to be a drummer in the church I used to go to. On their
Really,
worship team.
we need
Yeah.
drummers in our campuses right now.
I haven't
Man, I'd
played
love to
drums
see
in
that.
about a quarter of a century. So, but I used to notice that like the tempo would kind of ramp up and then go down. I was kind of I'm an engineer, and so my brain works weird. I'm thinking, are we kind of like stretching our emotions beyond their elastic limit so that
Right.
we can like be prepared for the sermon, or how is that working? Because I always notice the sort of transition in that the tempo and the keys and all that stuff, but I've never actually heard it articulated the way you said it.
Yeah.
Me either.
Kind of
Now, like, I don't mean to belabor this, but like, think about sunrise service. Well, at sunrise service, we're starting in the dark.
Yes.
But what's happening is the sun is crescendoing throughout the morning, and so when we build that set list, we don't come out of the gate at 120 BPM. We start with a slower song because we want to crescendo with
Gotcha.
the atmosphere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so our set list typically at sunrise will start with a slower tune, ramping into it's a slow tune that crescendos into a big moment, and then we'll come out of the gate with a faster song. So it's all.
So do you actually correlate
Wow.
that with the actual time of the sunrise?
Sure.
We know the time of the sunrise, and
Yeah.
so, and we know the times of the songs. And I'm telling you, man, God's the best production manager. And
See, the mechanics of this stuff is always so interesting to me.
Oh, sure.
well, a lot
man.
of when lights and haze and that kind of thing were introduced into the church, a lot of people were like, "This is rock and roll, and we shouldn't do this." And but man, you go out into a sunset or a sunrise, and I mean, humidity creates haze, and then clouds create color, and the sun, and it's like God is the best production manager.
Yeah.
And so the thing is to leverage those things, not to be distracting, but to elevate the moment, and that's the challenge, man. It really is. It really is.
Jeremy, how does two things? First, we have two services here typically. Are you doing the same songs the same way?
Right.
And with the other campuses, are they doing the same songs that we're doing here?
So to answer the first question, we do the same songs in both services at the Pensacola campus. That's what I love about our church, is that our experiences are the same. And then at our campuses, the actual template is the same.
Okay.
We're not necessarily doing the same exact songs on the day, but we are pulling from the same set of songs that
Gotcha.
we've created together.
Right. Yeah.
So we have the same library that we're
Okay.
pulling from. Now on Easter and Christmas, what we like to do is what we call Q to Q. So we like to program Q to Q exactly the same at all campuses. So wherever you're at, you're going to get the same experience.
Okay.
And so we try to do that on the big days, but on a regular Sunday, we pull from the same library and all. But the song sets can be different across campuses. Now here on Pensacola, they're the same for both services.
Do you okay those once the big set list, couple months worth, is okayed? Do you know what each campus is going to do every Sunday?
Yeah, we use a tool called Planning Center.
Okay.
And so we it's changed our lives. So we can go in and I can look at, a lot of times we'll look at each other's set lists. Some of us are more diligent in getting set lists out quicker than others. And and so whoever's sort of won that race, it's always a great thing to look at what everybody else is doing, and it's amazing how a lot of times it will complement each other.
Okay.
And so I don't necessarily give a stamp of approval or anything like that. I'm trying to let those guys lead their campuses the way it needs to be led. But if I see something that I consider maybe a problem, like this is not going to work, then I'll give instruction, and I'm not going to demand them to change it, but I'll say you might want to think about this.
Sure.
You know.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay. Cool.
So like first service to second service, you
Yes,
know,
sir.
you're on stage, you're leading worship, you walk off stage, an hour later you walk back on stage, do the same thing and walk off. What's going on like in your own mind as far as like mood, energy, worship environment, stuff like that? That always intrigues me.
Yeah, it's crazy because used to there was a dichotomy. There was a big difference between one service and the other, energy wise, because of just the demographics in the room. You know, the first service, the students are all at small groups, and then the second service, the students all come in.
That's right.
But lately, I've actually noticed an energy shift toward the first service. A lot of the people are coming in really energetic.
Is that right? Okay.
And so it's I don't see as much of a big difference as far as the congregation. Now, as far as us, we start call times at 6:45. That's we have a staggered call time. So tech arrives at 6:45, band arrives at 7, vocals arrive at 7:15. So everybody has their window to noodle and plug in and get ready. So at 7:30, we're all going to a full, what I call real-time rehearsal. And so then we're done with that about 8:05, and then we've got to do some tests for the campuses. So it's the early morning. And so we then have a 30-ish minute small group. So by the time we start at 9 o'clock, some of them have been there 2.5 hours.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
And so it's a long morning, but still in the first service, you're still your body's kind of still waking up, and and even though you've rehearsed the set list, it is your first time to present that to a live congregation, and sometimes the response that I thought would happen in my mind is different.
Oh,
and so it just hits different ways. And so after the first service, you kind of know what's going to work and what's not, and if you need to make some adjustments. So in the second service, we feel a little looser, but a lot of times that'll translate into the being a little sloppier sometimes in the second service because we're more comfortable. A lot of times our performance, if we want to use the actual technicality of the music and the vocals, is better in the first service because we're more nervous about it. We're more intentional. In the second service, we're much looser, a lot more energy, but sometimes it can come off even a little sloppier. Not always, but a lot of times that's the challenge because we want to be loose and we want the great energy, but there's one plays off the other.
Right.
Which one lends itself to broadcasting better?
It's funny that we always typically broadcast the second service.
Okay.
Good thing is we record them both.
Yeah.
So if there's any technical issues, we can use either one.
Okay.
Right.
And so there's been many weeks that we've used the worship session from service 1 and the preaching from service 2, or vice versa.
Okay. What about like personally, the people who are on stage leading worship? Does the song ever hit you different when you're on stage versus when you're practicing it versus when you're just listening to it on your own?
Yeah, I think it's just like scripture. You can read it over and over again, and every time it kind of hits you a different way.
Yeah.
And that's another challenge. Sometimes you're in a worship service, and the challenge, especially if you haven't had a steady diet of personal worship through the week, it can be very tempting to like let the moment overwhelm you to where it becomes a very personal worship time, like me and Jesus in this little circle. And there's nothing necessarily intrinsically wrong with that, but we're really there to lead others in worship.
Sure.
So it's so important for us to be.
That's interesting. Okay.
Yeah,
It's really important for us to have been with God and with Jesus throughout the week,
Right.
and not turn that Sunday morning into our personal worship experience, because then it's kind of like.
Yeah.
It's kind of like they're watching you worship Jesus when your job is to encourage them to worship with you.
Yeah.
It's a challenge because
Facilitate other people's worship.
yeah.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that a song can't. I mean, there's been songs hit me where it's just like I just choke up, and I think we need to be transparent, and we need to be real. I'm not one to just kind of. I don't want to fake it. You know, sometimes you have to fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
But I don't want to be not genuine in the worship. So yeah.
No, this is cool. I've always
Yeah.
wondered these
A
things.
song can
Never been
hit
able to
you.
ask them though.
It can hit you in a different way.
Sure.
And man, a song can hit you in a worship service where it's like, man, I just want to sit here and I want to fall to my knees and I just want to just sit here with Jesus. And it's like you have to just kind of balance that with, okay, is this going to be beneficial for the congregation or just for me?
Yeah.
And
If you're like me, Jeremy, if you get verklempt, you start getting emotional. I can't even talk. I
Yeah.
have to have a moment.
yeah,
And sometimes it's like 30 seconds, you know. And then, so I certainly couldn't sing if I was a singer, and I started getting overwhelmed with emotion. Is that part of your struggle as well?
well, I think there's a lot of emotions we have to deal with. I know people don't believe this, but I still get really nervous before
You've told me
every
that
time I
before.
step out. My
Yeah,
heart races. I get short of breath, and I think we should never lose that.
Yeah, yeah.
Because if we just get comfortable,
Right.
So we have to deal with the emotion. So you have to kind of control that anxiety, because if you don't, then you can't breathe, and then your voice goes crazy. On the other hand, I'm very excited. I get very excited in church, and sometimes I'm like, there's a welcome coming, and if I don't calm down, I'm not gonna be able to breathe and be able to talk right now. And so you have to talk yourself down.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of stuff going through your head.
I didn't think about that. Yeah. Because you do jump around a lot,
Because I
but it's usually after the welcome.
He's on to me. But if you ever hear me say hallelujah, a lot of times it might not be spiritual. It might be that I've forgotten the words. And I just, hallelujah. You know,
By the way, you know what? That is one
Is that
word.
what the angels around the throne are doing? They've forgotten the words so many times.
That is one word that I love saying that our church doesn't say a lot. I don't hear a lot of hallelujahs in a church.
Yeah.
I love that word.
well, that's another thing we have to temper, because you can sort of develop these spiritual tics where you're just saying it, but you don't mean it.
Yeah,
You know, it's
yes,
just
that's
like,
right,
hallelujah,
right,
brother,
right.
praise Jesus.
Right,
And it's
right,
like,
right.
it's just empty. Oh my goodness.
You know,
these are great questions.
There's one special person that we've already mentioned that is on stage with you
Yes.
almost every Sunday, if not every Sunday, really close
Yeah,
to
she's
it,
like,
right?
please stop scheduling me every week. I have a full-time job.
And she is on the leadership team. And how many people are on the team that are out?
Oh my goodness.
I mean, is it on one Sunday, like 7?
Oh, so on stage I have 9 vocals.
Okay, so 9 vocals.
Yeah.
And your wife, Deborah, is one of them.
She's one of them, yeah.
How does family dynamic, does that play into the worship? Does it play into the practicing, you know?
Well, one of the things we've just had to accept that we don't ever drive to church together.
Is that right? Okay. Intentionally or because of kids and you got to get here early and she...
Well, like I like to get here early.
Yeah.
I like to pick up, some food for the team.
Yeah.
And just get here and get my head on straight. And
Gotcha.
then we do have our children to manage. So she typically she stays at home a little later and getting them ready. And so she'll drive to church separately. And a lot of times she's not scheduled. And she still comes to both worship experiences. But we just settled early on that we just come separately. So the blessing of having her on the team is that we actually get to be on the stage together. This is another
I do like it when y'all both do the
welcome.
The welcome, yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. We're doing that this Sunday.
Good,
I think. No, maybe next Sunday. But it's crazy. We're never, as a family, we're never together unless we're on vacation. Like literally, because we have Tate's in the children's ministry, Zoe's in the student ministry, my son's off at college, and then my wife and I are serving in different.
Yeah.
But fortunately, right now we're on the worship team, so the days that she's scheduled, it's really cool to turn around and she's there. The dynamic is awesome. And then in the second service, Zoe is always there on the second row.
Okay.
And there will be a time or two along the way when Tate just wants to be in the worship service, and he'll come. But we try to encourage him to stick over in the kids ministry.
Right. Okay.
But so dynamically, sometimes it's difficult because we're in different places. But having her on the team definitely, it's nice.
Nice. Good.
It's nice.
Very good.
That's cool. That's cool.
That is pretty cool.
Until I start bossing her around, and she's
Yeah, I
like,
bet
"You're not
she
going to
loves
tell me what to
that.
do."
That was the real reason we were asking the question.
She's the boss. When she's scheduled, everybody knows she's the boss.
I have a wife named Deborah as well, and I know how that works.
You know how that goes. Does she go by anything but Deborah?
Well, it's usually Debbie.
Okay.
I call her Deb, which I called her that for years, and then she finally told me like she doesn't really like Deb, but
Right.
she lets me do it. I tend to just make everybody's name into a single syllable nickname, but I do the same thing with
I
my
call her
daughter.
Debo, but she only wants to be called Deborah. So you know,
Yeah.
Okay.
I was just curious. That was a
Yeah, no, it's good question. Yeah.
squirrel.
Your son, your oldest son, plays football. Tell us about what's going on with that.
So he's played football since he was 8, and his dream has always been to play in the NFL. And but he's also had a dream to fly as an aviator, and which is awesome to live in Pensacola. And so he actually started college majoring in aviation, but he also had a chance to play football at Louisiana Tech.
Yes,
so,
sir.
So he always will be able to say he played Division I football, which is really cool.
Fantastic.
But football is a political game, just like it is
Okay.
anything else. And so it's been a challenge along the way, ups and downs. He ended up in a junior college in Arizona for a while. That was a pretty terrible experience. Not because he played bad; it was not a great experience. Ends up back in Louisiana at a different school that does not have aviation. So he pretty much is just trying to finish a general studies degree. The school he ended up at was a Southeastern Louisiana University, which is also a Division I school, just in a different conference. And so he played there for a while. But I think where he's at right now, he's just ready to graduate and move on with his life.
Gotcha.
I think he could do it, but I think he's just gotten tired. It's like he's just like, I'm ready to just kind of move on. He's 22 now. I mean, football in high school and college is a full-time job. It's a full-time job.
No kidding.
You know,
Wow.
it's
Okay.
everything from what you wear to what you eat to your
Okay.
studies to
Yeah.
your practices. He has no life, and he's ready to graduate. And I think he's potentially going to go with a private route and finish it and do aviation.
Okay, great.
So that's what
Fantastic.
So we'll see how this next semester plays out.
Right.
But at this moment, it looks like he's not going to be playing football. But
Okay.
we've said that before, and he's ended up playing. So he came to church a couple of weeks ago, surprised me, and I was
nice.
I don't surprise easy, and I did not suspect him coming.
Wow.
And I was emotional basket
I bet
case.
you were,
but he
man.
is in his bulking phase right now. He lifts weights, and he came in he was 235 pounds.
Good gracious.
And it's the biggest I've ever seen him.
What
And
are
I
you-
was like,
what are you
son,
used to
what
see?"
are you doing?
Yeah, I'm in my bulking phase right now, but it's entirely different bulk.
Totally different training.
More
He's usually in the
section.
he's usually 205, 210 range.
Wow, so he was 20-something pounds
And
heavier.
he's 235.
Wow.
But now he's in the shredding phase where he's gonna like
Okay.
kind of cut it into all that bulk he's put on. But man, it must be nice to be young.
Boy,
you know?
the youth. I
I'm with
imagine.
Josh. I'm in my bulking phase as well.
No, you have actually dropped. You're looking great, Jeremy. You have worked hard at it, and you have succeeded in shredding. As a dad bod is shredding the dad bods that we have. That means totally something different than your son. Jeremy and I had a quick conversation the other day about how to hide our dad bods
Right.
before wearing our favorite T-shirt. Just let everybody just think about that for a minute. There's ways of doing it.
You
Yeah.
know, the only thing that I really look forward to, not the only thing, but one of the things I look forward to in heaven is abs, because it's never going to happen on earth.
Well, you're assuming that's the ideal body.
Hey, we're just
Maybe
going
the ideal shape is a sphere.
round as a shape.
Yeah,
That's a good shape. Oh my God.
that's what I'm hoping for.
And we digress.
Well, getting back into it, because we're almost at an hour here. What are some of the songs, really any genre, sacred, secular, whatever, that meant a lot to you? What are your favorites, things like that? If just a couple that come to the top of your mind.
Well, just for fun and secular, this is just the secular throw it out. So people always ask me what my favorite song is. It will always be "In the Air Tonight," Phil Collins. Just throwing that out.
Okay.
So because I'm a drummer, the big do 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 do.
Yep.
Sure.
So it always gets me. It's a very spiritual experience. But actually, Mercy Me. Remember Mercy Me?
Yeah.
They actually started one of their tours with that song, and I was like, I knew it was a Christian song. But
I was in an Uber a couple weeks ago, and the guy had that playing on the thing. And even though I've never seen this guy in my life, when it came to that drum part, I had to do the air drums.
Who doesn't do it?
everybody.
You gotta do it, man. That's so funny.
So okay, we'll throw that out.
Okay.
But everybody has what they call, especially if you've been raised in church, you have your heart music. So everybody has the music that speaks to you. Some people are spoken to through country gospel music. I was raised on hymns, but let me qualify that. There's Baptist hymns with choir and orchestra and organ. I was raised on the Heavenly Highway hymn book, which is a very Southern gospel feeling. Stamps, Baxter, shape notes. I don't know if you quartet style music.
Right.
That's what I grew up on, and so a lot of the songs that we sang growing up will always be at the forefront of my mind. Songs that will always make me emotional are "Great Is Thy Faithfulness," "How Great Thou Art," "Blessed Assurance." Those songs will always, "Amazing Grace." Those will always be songs that, "Because He Lives," that's a Bill Gaither song.
Oh, yes.
I grew up in a very hymn-oriented Southern, Pentecostal church.
Okay.
And songs like "My Jesus, I Love Thee," the lyrics
Oh,
of
yeah.
it, and "Come Thou Fount," especially the verse that talks about my Ebenezer.
That song is powerful.
Yeah, those have always been my de facto favorites.
Right.
As far as the old hymns and stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
But other songs that move me are "The Heart of Worship" by Matt Redman. That's probably one of my favorites. Recent song "Gratitude" by Brandon Lake.
Okay. I don't know if I know that one.
That song just gets me every time. So there, "How Great Is Our God" will probably be one of my favorite. It's just always comes to my mind in a moment when we just need to worship.
Okay.
That one paired with "How Great Thou Art" is just a winning combination, because you sort of hit everybody. You get the people who are familiar with the hymns and the ones that like the modern worship songs. Anyway,
the lyrics to "How Great Thou Art," if you just read them, it is a poem, a beautiful King James poem. It really is to me.
And if you hear it sung by Carrie Underwood, even better.
Woo, my goodness gracious.
Agreed.
Goodness gracious.
Agreed.
You watch her sing it with Vince Gill, and you said, how is it going to be any better in heaven?
Right.
Because that performance, do you know what performance I'm talking about?
I've listened to it 100 times.
My gosh, that performance, that live performance that they did was outrageous. Everybody, whatever award ceremony they were at, they were all the big hits of country music.
Yeah.
Everybody was standing, and you could just tell that it was a moment in time that was not going to be forgotten.
Right.
Yeah.
But it was beautiful.
One of the ones, you mentioned Gaither, and I think this is one that Gaithers sing a lot. It's Lord, I believe, help thou my unbelief.
That's a good one.
That one, every time I hear that, I'm not really an emotional person.
Right.
My wife kind of jokes with me, being an engineer, I'm kind of like Spock from Star Trek, very even keel emotion. She told my mother-in-law once, because my mother-in-law asked, why doesn't he really ever get excited? Well, he's kind of even keel. If he finds $10, he's like, oh, cool. If he wins the lottery, he's like, oh, cool.
Yeah, exciting.
But there are certain songs like that start to get me choked up.
Yeah.
And that's one of them.
They stir you. How about that?
Yeah.
What's the name of it again?
Lord, I believe, help thou mine unbelief. I don't know. I can't remember what the actual name of the song is, but that's the main lyric. It harkens back to an account in the New Testament where someone said that to Jesus.
Gotcha. Jeremy, or something before we close up, are there songs that you remember as a youth that were pivotal to you, or he brings you back to a time, or even generally, or songs
other than Phil Collins
that can bring right? Other than Phil Collins.
Oh man, there's a couple sides of that. So in the worship setting, there were songs that were just great songs. "Shout to the Lord" was a song.
Yeah, I remember that.
That one changed history.
That's like quintessential 90s right there.
It changed the history of praise and worship music.
Yes,
And
okay.
a Daryl Evans song I think called "Trading My Sorrows" was another one that we just that era of worship music was just powerful.
Okay.
In the Secret was another one. Now here's a little fun fact. The first praise and worship I ever heard was actually Lyndall Cooley, and the album was called "Revival at Brownsville." So that's right here in this area,
within 7 miles from where
and so I always find it really interesting that the first introduction to praise and worship was out of Pensacola, and now I'm serving in Pensacola. I think it's a really full circle. And so Mark Tegenkamp, who owns the Coffee Guy, who is the Coffee Guy, he is best friends with Lyndall Cooley. And so over the time I've been here, I've gotten to actually meet him.
Oh boy!
And
wow!
And the thing about Lyndall Cooley's style of worship is it really mixed that transcendent vertical worship with more of a style that I was familiar with. It was like a Southern country style that he somehow melded together, and it was so familiar yet it was so different. And that's the one thing that got my attention, and that's when I realized my call to lead worship. So I always that will forever have changed my life.
It's a pivotal song for you.
And there was another Integrity put out a worship album. It was I think it was called Winds of Worship. It also came out of the Brownsville church, but there were all kinds of worship leaders on it. I just thought it was amazing. And I know there's a lot of different opinions and stuff on the Brownsville revival, but the actual music that came out of that and the music that I was exposed to was praise and worship, and it was a style I was familiar with, and I just still always think it's a full circle thing that the music that inspired me to do what I'm doing came out of Pensacola.
Yeah.
I can always I love to take pictures and videos and just be around people that are great at what they do. And one of the signs to me that people are doing what God has called them to do and what they're great at doing is having a recall like you just had.
Wow.
You're not looking at any notes, by the way, for our listeners. Just going back in time and naming names of the singers and the songs. That tells me, it's like watching a pro golfer. Have you ever noticed in pro golf whenever they're interviewing the winner or the second place, they're recalling in detail the shot off of the second tee.
Right. Well, I was at the tree at the pine cone.
Unbelievable that they can do that. They have that sense, and that's what, to me, that's what you just did. I think basketball players can do that. They're really, really good. Good quarterbacks can do that. They're picking everything out. To me, that has to be a gift, to be able to go back in your memory and do that. So
I was on a college choir tour, and this was back when we had the Discman. It was like the Walkman, but it was
to run with a Discman.
Discman. How did you run with it?
It was rough.
Skip.
Well, they had the one with the anti-skip.
That's right. Oh my gosh!
I think I held it in my hand.
Anti-skip.
I held it in my hand.
Kids these days will never appreciate what anti-skip.
Only having 10 songs, putting it on random and
Mine was
being
Big
frustrated that it keeps playing the same
The
song.
first time I ever heard the DC Talk Jesus Freak album changed my life.
I still have that memorized.
Right? We could probably do the rap. We won't. But there was a man with a tat on it.
Big belly, wiggle around like marmalade jelly.
Oh, we're about to do it. It's about to get lit up in here. YouTube is not ready for Josh rapping.
You have to, like, if you're a true fan, the old, like, I love rap music, the DC Talk from, like, the late 80s, right?
Love is a verb.
Yeah,
Guys,
LUV.
We're at a little over an hour. You guys are just going to start going DC Talk.
I feel like this needs to be long form. We're going Joe Rogan, 2.5 hours right now.
We could do it. We'll close up with this. One of the first memories I have of you.
This is scary.
I wanted to do this at the beginning, but I have to get this in. I used to have these dizzy spells that just took me out. Do you remember that? So it's been since been diagnosed as Meniere's disease. It says disease, you think things are eating away. That's not the way it is. It's just a condition. But it used to literally on the floor, sweating. I couldn't move. The ambulance came, take me away. So that happened one day. And I'm sitting 7 years ago. Whenever you first got here, it had to be. You've been here 7 years.
Yeah. Well, it'll be in January. Yeah.
Okay, so it was close to 7 years ago that I went to the emergency room, sitting there with my wife, and the nurse had me get up on the side of the bed because at this point I was still couldn't move, couldn't open my eyes. I was sweating, and I was about to get sick. And the nurse was less than a foot from me. Do you remember?
I remember.
The nurse was just less than a foot from me, holding me up. And I'm looking right at her. I'm saying, please hurry, please hurry, please hurry. Jeremy comes in. I think you were here for a week or so. I don't know. But you were the one that was tapped to come see me at the emergency room.
Right.
And you came in, and I looked over. And for some reason, I just started feeling, you said, sorry, I don't want to disturb you. Jeremy said, do you remember what came out of my mouth automatically?
I remember the visit. I don't remember what automatically.
What I said was, "Well, come on in. He's just taking out my nipple rings."
Oh, I do remember that
because he was standing right in front of me, and it looked he was holding me like under the arm, and I don't know.
This was a family show.
I don't know why that came out of my mouth whenever I saw the new pastor walk in. But I think we had met and talked before. I bring
the worst out of
you. Bring the best out of me. I have always had that relationship with you, and I am thankful for that, Jeremy. I am.
I have since got nipple rings. I'm kidding. To commemorate that moment. We need to edit that part out.
The funny thing is, I'm not going to. So, but that was so embarrassing for my wife, Dawn. She said, you have to go apologize to him. And she promised me that I would, and I did, and I know it didn't impact you. But anyway, I'm
doing this because my wife made me.
I don't know why I said, can you imagine me saying that to Pastor Godfrey if he came in? You know what I mean?
That could go one or two ways.
The truth is, it's like when people are real like that, it's like, these are my people. You know? I can just be myself.
That's the way I feel about it too. But anyway, I just wanted to bring that. I just always remember that story, and for some reason, you bring that out of me, and I
that's
appreciate
a really good way
Jeremy.
to close.
We're going to close with
nipple
a nipple
ring
ring story.
I feel like that memory was erased along the way, and now it's back with a vengeance.
Now it's back.
I know it wasn't Donna's mind until today.
Jeremy went to the staff meeting after. Pastor Godfrey, how do you visit with Dexter go? Well, he was taking out his nipple rings when I got there.
Other than that, he's a new believer.
That's right. Maybe we need to discuss church discipline.
The poor nurse. What did the nurse think? I hadn't even thought about what the nurse was. Anyway, Jeremy.
No, I'm not.
Jeremy, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me. This has been awesome. I can't believe an hour has already passed.
Hour, 7 minutes.
Wow.
We should do this again and just talk about old DC talk. No,
You'll release an album. There is a lot more that I would like to ask you. Technically,
in the next session, Josh is going to do the full second verse rap of Jesus Freak.
Yep.
I think he could do it.
I know he could do it.
There's so many other questions I'd like to ask. Technically, the relationship between you and all the technical part of how it comes out of the speakers. All the stuff that comes out of the speakers, man, it takes a lot of people and a lot of time and a lot of money and a lot of prep to make that happen. And to make it look so easy, again, the people that are great at what they do, they make it look easy.
Yep.
And really, most people that come, the 1,000, however many people come to the services, they come in and they're looking on, they expect it to be perfect. And it pretty much is close to perfect as possible, and you lead that, Jeremy, and without me blowing any smoke your way, thank you for that. It means a lot to us.
Thanks,
We
Destry.
appreciate it.
I can assure you it's not. And,
especially the second service.
The only gift I have is just surrounding myself with people that make me look good.
Beautiful.
The sad thing is I get credit for a lot of things that I don't do,
Well,
but that's part of being leadership.
Yep.
But there are people that if I didn't have these people around me,
Sure.
it would be a sinking ship. So
we're
thank you to
thankful.
all the tech staff.
There you go.
The vocal teams, the bands. There's people that you don't even know and see that work early in the morning. And so thanks to all those guys.
And they're the troubleshooting. They're the troubleshooting
Yep.
people, man. 'Cause
Troubleshooting, as the engineer probably knows, is an art and a science.
It really is.
And when you're emotional, you can't troubleshoot. You know, when your emotions go up, your ability to reason goes down.
Left brain versus right brain.
Yeah.
I have seen Zane. Zane is the engineer. What's his title? What's Zane?
Well, he is currently serving as a sort of a tech director.
Okay.
And so the interesting thing about Zane is he has gifts in both sides. He's musical and technical. So he's kind of like a unicorn.
Yes, he's
And,
really good.
so-
I have seen him troubleshoot where I would have gone crazy, and he didn't change his demeanor. That's
Yeah.
what you need. His demeanor was just as flat.
Now the quintessential tech directors are stone cold.
Robbie was.
They have to be.
you know,
Yeah.
just that
And it's-
troubleshoot.
Anyway, we can
Yeah.
talk. That's a
Yeah,
whole other
that's the only
episode.
thing.
But
Session 2.
session 2.
Jeremy, thank you. We appreciate you, buddy.
What an honor.
Yeah, this
you
was
guys,
a lot of fun.
You guys are awesome.
All right, thanks, buddy. We love you. And Josh, anything else you want to close with?
Oh,
We're
I'm
good.
Yeah.
Chris, thanks for being here. We appreciate you, man.
Word to your mother.
Yep.
Word to your mom and them. We'll see y'all later.